Directly across the street is Harry's Corner. When Nicholas Cage lived here, I don't remember what year, but this is the bar that Nicholas Cage was arrested at when he lived here in New Orleans at Madame Lalarie's house when he bought it. And he had an altercation with his girlfriend and was arrested right here. Across the street. This is it. Somewhere in here.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're a first-time viewer, I'm happy you found me. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, share, and click the notifications for new content. Again, welcome, and let's get into the story. Nicholas Cage is the nephew of the famous Hollywood film director, producer, and screenwriter Francis Ford Coppola, who directed the S.E. Hinton novel The Outsiders, and also The Godfather Parts 1 and 2, and many more movies. As a matter of fact, Nick's real last name is Coppola, but because he not only wanted to distance himself as an actor and to avoid nepotism from only being known as the nephew of his famous director uncle, he took inspiration from his love of comic books and chose the stage name from Marvel's Luke Cage. Nick Cage is also a huge Superman fan and aspired to play the role that never came to fruition. He even named his son Kal-El, which is Superman's birth name from the planet Krypton. By the way, Kal-El Cage made his acting debut as the voiceover character for a young Bruce Wayne, also known as Batman in the DC Universe animated movie Teen Titans Go to the movies. Not only has Nick Cage filmed in New Orleans, where many movie productions and TV shows have taken place, but he also bought the Lalaurie Mansion in 2007 for inspiration to write a horror novel. However, he claims the place freaked him out and he only spent one night there, but he also lost the mansion due to bankruptcy and foreclosure. If you don't know about the Lalaurie Mansion, in 1832, it is where socialite and enslaver Madame Delphine Lalaurie tortured and murdered her slaves. And I do have a video on my channel about that story, which I will put an in-video link to the content at the end of this video. The story is also depicted in American Horror Story, Coven, and Kathy Bates portrays Delphine Lalaurie. I have also visited and filmed the mansion located in the Garden District that was used as Miss Robichaud's Academy for witches, and both of those videos can be found on my YouTube channel as well. New Orleans is where Nicholas Cage will be buried when he passes away. A pyramid-shaped tomb, commissioned by him, was built and is located inside the St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Many people are opposed to his future burial site, and the subject has stirred up controversy amongst the locals. The content in this video about Nicholas Cage will go more in depth about some of the stories I just mentioned, along with a spot I filmed on location for my last trip in June, where he was arrested at a bar in the French Quarter for public intoxication and fighting with his wife. It is obvious that Nicholas Cage has a great love for New Orleans, most people do, but do the locals reciprocate? Keep watching to find out. By the way, in the early 80s, Cage auditioned for the role of Dallas Winston in The Outsiders, but his uncle denied him that role, which was portrayed by Matt Dillon instead. His uncle did offer him the role of Two-Bit, played by Emilio Estevez, but because he claimed he put so much effort into winning the role of his preference, he basically threw his hands up and walked away from the project. However, in the main fight scene, the rumble at the ending, he was cast as one of the rival gang members, Asosh, in a short cameo. Later that same year, he was cast in his uncle's next movie, Rumblefish, where he played Smokey and is listed as Nicholas Coppola in the credits. The movie was one of his earlier films released in 1983, the same year as The Outsiders. In 1995, he starred in Leaving Las Vegas, which won him an Oscar at the Academy Awards in 1996. In 2009, Cage returned to New Orleans to star in a movie called Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans, playing the role of a character named Terrence McDonough, a cop addicted to painkillers from an injury he sustained while rescuing a prisoner during Hurricane Katrina. So why did Nicolas Cage choose New Orleans for his final resting place once he is no longer living? And why are the locals unhappy with his decision to do so? St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, established in 1789, is the oldest cemetery in New Orleans. Since the city was founded in 1718, you may be wondering how this cemetery could be the oldest one there. In reality, it isn't. New Orleans suffered two great fires, one in 1788 and the other in 1794. After the Great Fire of 1788, much of the French Quarter was destroyed, and the extremely full cemetery located on St. Peter Street, along with the concerns for the spread of disease in the city and the closeness it shared with the locals living in the French Quarter, was shut down by the acting government of the city, who ordered the cemetery to be moved further away from the population. Only, they didn't exhume the bodies of the original cemetery, and in time, developed more property and buildings on top of the old cemetery instead. If you are ever in New Orleans walking around the French Quarter, especially on St. Peter, Burgundy, Toulouse, and Rampart Streets, you can bet your bottom dollar you are walking over some of the early 18th century graves of the people who built the city. Owned by the Archdiocese, the church selected a 300 square foot piece of land outside of the French Quarter, now located on Basin Street. At first, people were buried underground, the same way they were buried in the original cemetery on St. Peter. But in 1803, a city ordinance was issued mandating that all forms of interment be above ground for two reasons. One, the water table, and two, the European tradition, derived for the aesthetic style of French and Spanish cemeteries, of the above-ground elaborate tombs and mausoleums. Before 2015, the public could waltz right into St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 and explore as they wished, until vandalism became a problem, and they drew the line when the tomb of the great voodoo queen Marie Laveau was painted Pepto-Bismol pink. Today, if you want to visit the St. Louis Cemetery No. 1 or any Catholic cemetery in the city, you must hire a tour guide or go in with a tour group. But the Protestant ones, like the Lafayette cemeteries, are free to roam around as you wish, so long as you visit during opening hours, usually from dawn to dusk. Nicolas Cage, who is Catholic but not from New Orleans, is from California. The criteria in New Orleans that must be met to be buried in the St. Louis Cemetery is that you must be Catholic and a resident by birthright. Cage is only one of these, so why was he allowed to build this pyramid tomb, which is funded by Perpetual Care, and why are the locals unhappy about it? When Cage was given permission by the church to build his tomb, some of the most ancient graves were destroyed in the process, and he was the one that ordered the graves to be desecrated, just to be certain there would be enough space to fit his ridiculous tomb in an already crowded and historical cemetery. Why the Archdiocese allowed this? I can only speculate. Money talks. Because of his fame and the fact New Orleans is a huge tourist attraction, lipstick prints of women kissing his grave have had to be cleaned off numerous times, and when he first found out about this, that the people who cared for the cemetery were washing them away, it pissed him off. He even complained about it. And remember, this is a perpetual care cemetery that the city pays for. If you plan to visit today, you must have a tourist guide with you, and bring $2 to donate to the betterment of the cemetery. And here's the kicker. According to reports, Nicolas Cage is a big lover of voodoo, something most of the natives are, with many considering it a part of their religion. They use intent for bringing good into both this world and the ever after. And because the voodoo queen, Marie Laveau, is buried there, is his reason. However, if it makes anyone feel better, The tomb has been repaired several times from natural disasters. It's been struck by lightning on several occasions. Time to talk about that mugshot. In 2011, while filming a movie in the city, Cage and his wife visited a bar in the French Quarter where later he basically made a fool of himself after leaving, causing a scene in the area. Here's the article I found online, and I'm going to read it verbatim. Nicholas Cage was arrested Saturday morning in New Orleans. The actor, 47, who is filming a movie in the area, was taken into custody and charged with domestic abuse and disturbing the peace after an argument in the French Quarter with his wife Alice Kim, according to the New Orleans Police Department. The next thing I am going to read to you from that same article are the quotes from the people who witnessed this, including police, locals, tourists, and even an inmate at the jail. Cage and his wife were standing in front of a residence that he insisted was the property the couple was renting. She disagreed, and Cage grabbed her by the upper arm and pulled her to what he believed was the correct address. There were no visible signs of injury on his wife's arm. The actor then began striking vehicles and later attempted to get into a taxi. At that point, an officer who had been flagged down by onlookers drove up on the couple and immediately observed that Cage was heavily intoxicated and ordered him out of the cab, which prompted Cage to start yelling. The police decided to arrest Cage and took him to central lockup. Another eyewitness said, "We were at a restaurant and we noticed what we at first thought was a homeless man completely drunk and being rowdy. We were shocked to find out later it was Nicholas Cage." The inmate at the jail had this to say: "He was drunk. He wasn't in a cell. He was behind the counter with all the other officers. If you notice in the mugshot, it isn't typical. You can tell he is just standing in an ordinary room. There is no backdrop, nor is he holding a sign, and no side view either. He just looks like a drunk dude hanging out in a police station. If that doesn't define white privilege, I don't know what does." Furthermore, in the end, Cage's attorney, Harry Rosenberg, said that the district attorney's office refused the charges and no prosecution would occur. In addition, they also said his conduct did not amount to criminal conduct. And honestly, being drunk in public in New Orleans is a normal thing. I watched a man choke his wife or girlfriend in broad daylight and no one but me batted an eye. Basically, Cage was just being a drunk asshat. The worst thing he did was pull on his wife's arm and yell at her. And I don't condone domestic violence in any form, but she probably refused to press charges, as she really wasn't hurt. Dealing with an ordinary, non-violent, belligerent jackass is a choice, not a crime. But had this been anyone else, he or she wouldn't have been just standing behind a counter hanging out with police, and charges would have stuck. You can bet on that. And I am not an anti-Nick Cage fan. I find him hilarious in some of his movies, and in others, his acting is pure genius. In reality, money or no money, he is just a regular human being, just like the rest of us. If he can get away with public drunkenness while acting the fool, so long as he isn't harming another person or property, then the drunk tank in New Orleans shouldn't even exist. After all, I once watched a cop take a leak in the street standing by his patrol car. They don't call it the Big Easy for nothing, where you can work, party, and get away with shit all at the same time, and have fun while doing it. And remember, what happens in New Orleans stays in... Oh wait, that's Las Vegas. For new content and breaking news stories, please be sure to click the notifications to follow along and be notified when updates are available. Don't forget to like, comment, and please feel free to share. You can also join my Facebook group for True Crime and History Time and follow me on TikTok and Instagram. My usernames for those platforms are @JerryScarborough Official. And as always, thank you for watching, subscribing, and supporting my channel.